All right, ladies and gentlemen, today we are going to kind of wrap up everything we have learned in this unit so far to understand how the world came to the brink of World War II in the 1930s. Remember, at the end of World War I, no one in the world really wanted to have another conflict, and really the 1920s were dedicated to preventing another conflict. The Treaty of Versailles was created to prevent another large-scale conflict, and then there were other international agreements that were made throughout the 1920s that were supposed to lessen the potential for another world conflict. Still, despite all of that, by the late 1930s, the world was on the brink of another major global conflict. And today we're going to try to put all of the stuff we reviewed together to understand how that came to be. This is your note page for today. The first thing you're going to do in a moment is look through this cartoon. You're going to identify things you notice in this cartoon, the text and words you see, the animals you see, the text at the bottom. Fill in everything you can here and try to write out and figure out what the message the cartoon is trying to send to the reader. Also, you will get this answer key I will post into your Google Classroom stream early tomorrow morning, early Wednesday morning, so that you guys can review the answers your answers to how Adolf Hitler came to power in Germany, and also what it was like to live in Nazi Germany under Hitler and the Nazi Party. All right. So, for us to understand how World War II started, we have to go all the way back to World War I. When World War I ended, you'll recall that the international agreement that was made to end World War I was called the Treaty of Versailles, and the Treaty of Versailles had some serious problems. Number one, it did not acknowledge that every country involved in World War I shared some of the blame for World War I starting. Instead, France and Great Britain, the leading powers in Versailles, in Paris, when the treaty was written, punished Germany dramatically. They made Germany very, very weak. That caused a great deal of instability in the 1920s, and then when the Great Depression started, that ultimately led to the rise of the Nazis and Adolf Hitler. Japan and Italy were also upset with the Treaty of Versailles, but to a lesser extent. Both of those countries expected to receive some sort of benefit from being on the winning side in World War I. They wanted to get some extra land, really, at the end of the war. In neither case did those countries get land that they wanted. It made the people in those countries upset with their governments and ultimately contributed to the rise of totalitarian fascist dictatorships in those countries. So the Great Depression also contributed to the start of World War II, because the Great Depression caused a great deal of economic instability in places around the world, and especially that was true in Germany and Japan. In both of those countries, the Great Depression caused high rates of unemployment. It caused the closing of businesses. It left people homeless or needing food. In both those countries, in both Germany and Japan, the Nazi Party, led by Adolf Hitler, and the military, led by Hideki Tojo, promised to restore or make their countries, return their countries to economic prosperity. And because of that, there was a great deal of popular support for the Nazi Party in Germany and the military taking over the government in Japan. So basically, because of a wide range of factors in Italy, the Soviet Union, Japan, and Germany, totalitarian fascist dictators all came to power in those countries. And each of these leaders relied on nationalism to build up support, but then also wanted to build their militaries to expand their borders. So this is where we start to see World War II take root. In the 1920s into the 1930s, instability in each of these countries, Italy, the Soviet Union, Japan, and Germany, led to the rise of these leaders, all of whom wanted to build up their armies and take new land. So you're starting to see aggressive leadership take control in those countries. And these four people ultimately are the reason that World War II came to a start, especially Hitler in Germany, Benito Mussolini in Italy, and Hideki Tojo in Japan. Now, you guys might be thinking, Mr. Boyle, there were measures put in place to prevent worldwide conflict after World War I. One of those things was the League of Nations. You guys remember the League of Nations was created at the end of World War I as part of the Treaty of Versailles. It was supposed to be an international peacekeeping organization. All the countries in the world basically promised they would not use war to solve their problems, and if there was a conflict, they would come together and meet in the League of Nations with all of the other countries, and they would work out their problems. And what you guys probably noticed in the cartoon that you were looking at for your do now is that you have a rabbit facing off with a snake. You guys know that snakes typically eat rabbits, and that rabbits can't defend themselves from snakes. And if we look further into this cartoon, we see that the rabbit is labeled the League of Nations, and international strife is the snake. Now, international strife means international conflict. So what this artist is telling us, at least in the image, is that the League of Nations couldn't stand up to international conflict, that really the League of Nations couldn't stop international conflict from happening. And the caption makes that clear as well. Now, the actual text says moral suasion. Really meant in the 1920s, this would have meant moral persuasion. And the rabbit is saying, my offensive equipment being practically nil or nothing, it remains for me to fascinate him, the snake, with the power of my eye. Of course, the snake is not being hypnotized by a rabbit. It's not possible. We know that eventually it looks as though if there was another scene in this cartoon, the snake would eat the rabbit. And what the artist is telling us is that the League of Nations couldn't really stop international conflict, and that actually bore out to be true. The best example of that, 1931, Japan invaded the northern territory of China called Manchuria. Japan and China were both countries in the League of Nations, so Japan wasn't supposed to do this. So the issue was brought to the League of Nations. I have this video here. We're not going to watch all of it. But basically, this newsreel takes us through what happened when the issue was brought to the League of Nations. I'll fast forward a little bit here, but basically, the ambassador of Japan was told, "Hey, you've got to leave northern China. You're not allowed to be there. It's against the law." Of course, as the artist told us a moment ago, there was no way for the League of Nations to do anything to stop Japan. They couldn't actually do anything to stop Japan from being in northern China. And as we go throughout this video, we'll move a little bit farther. They're tallying the votes here. Basically, everyone voted in the League of Nations, oh, Japan, you have to leave northern China. This guy reading the announcement. When he finished reading the announcement, the ambassador for Japan came back up to the front of the room, said, we don't accept your decision, and then left and kept invading China. Really, there was nothing that the League of Nations could actually do to stop international conflict. The same thing happened when Italy invaded Ethiopia. The League of Nations said, you can't do that. Italy did it anyway. And that leads us up to the last two rows of your chart in your note page. So Adolf Hitler, as leader of Nazi Germany, is probably the person most responsible for starting World War II. And what you guys are going to do is read about what Hitler did as the leader of Nazi Germany that eventually brought about World War II. Right? You're going to open up this linked reading. You're going to skip the first one, which is about the Treaty of Versailles. You're going to read this page, Hitler's actions, down into this page, and then read about the policy of appeasement here, which is 2 pages long, and this chart here at the end, to complete the last 2 columns or last 2 rows of your note page here. Basically, you have to open the linked article, skip the reading about the Treaty of Versailles, describe what Hitler did that was aggressive. You should have at least 3 examples of aggressive acts that Hitler took as leader of Nazi Germany, and then describe what appeasement was and what that policy was and how that also allowed Hitler to become stronger and eventually for World War II to start. The next time we talk, I think, will be on Monday, the 27th. On Monday the 27th, we'll look at the early stages of World War II, what actually happened to start the conflict, what sides were successful, who fought against who, and we'll see eventually how the United States became involved and what ultimately happened as the war progressed. I'll see you guys at office hours, which will be Wednesday morning between 8 and 9 a.m., and then Thursday night 7 to 8, and then Friday morning 8 to 9 a.m. again. Any other questions or concerns, please send me an email. I hope you guys are all well, and I'll talk to you and see you soon.